Ahoy, this is Zdenka. How to use iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max camera app. Last year I have created iPhone 13 Pro tutorial, so this is an updated version of this in-depth tutorial. We are gonna go through camera settings, time lapses, slow motion, portrait mode, and cinematic video. A lot of examples will be shown. Timestamps are included so you can find the sections you're looking for faster. So it's a good idea to bookmark this video for future. To get the most out of your cameras on your new iPhone 14 Pro, let's go through camera settings where you can enable and disable many things. First, we are going to select formats. Here, you can choose between saving your files in HEIF format, which will save you storage, or you can select the most compatible, where photos will be saved in JPEG and video in H.264 format. I personally have it set to most compatible. Please note that cinematic video, 4K at 60 frames per second, 1080p at 240 frames per second, and HDR video require high efficiency, so those will be saved in that format. JPEG photos are compressed, they have less quality. If you like to further edit your photos in Photoshop or Lightroom, you will most likely want to enable Apple ProRAW. These files retain the most information and dynamic range, which gives you better quality and more flexibility when editing exposure and white balance. Photos on wide lens or the standard lens can be saved either at 12 megapixels or 48 megapixels. I optioned for the higher quality, which is 48 megapixels. Please note that night mode, flash, and macro photos will always be saved only at 12 megapixels. When it comes to video, you can also enable ProRes if you're someone who would like to work with this large video format in post-production. ProRes is supported for up to 30 frames per second at 4K and up to 60 frames per second at 1080p. The files will be very large, so you need a lot of storage on your phone. A minute of 10-bit HDR ProRes will be around 1.7 GB for HD. If you will be filming in 4K, it will be roughly 6 GB. Let's go into the next setting, which is record video. Here is what size and frame rate you want to record your videos by default when you open up the camera app. I have the default set in 4K at 24 frames per second. Keep in mind that if you will be recording using QuickTake, it will be always recorded with 1080p HD at 30 frames per second. So if you want to record in 4K, rather select video mode instead. For those who are not familiar with QuickTake, what is it? If you are in a photo mode and long press the shutter button, it will start recording video. You can swipe to the right to keep recording. If you press and hold and swipe to the left, you will be taking photos in burst mode. If you need to shoot in PAL formats, you can enable it here. Enhanced stabilization is enabled by default. That means that video and cinematic mode will have further stabilization. However, there will be a crop as the video will zoom in a bit. If you're going to be using a gimbal and want this turned off, here is where you can disable this. If you will be using action mode in lower light, you can enable this to optimize for lower light scenes by decreasing the stabilization. HDR video I have also enabled. Here you can record up to 60 frames per second in 10-bit dynamic range, including Dolby Vision. Out of frames per second, I turned off. What it does, it will reduce frame rates to 24 if you are filming in low light. So, if I'm filming in 60 frames per second and the phone thinks it's better to drop to 24, that means it's gonna drop the frames, which I don't want because I purposely film in 60 frames per second, so I can then later slow it down in the post if I want to. Lock camera I have set to off as I want to be able to switch between cameras while I'm recording. Let's go to record slow-mo, where you can select if you want to record slow motion by default at 120 or 240 frames per second in 1080p or 240 frames per second at 720p. I prefer 120 frames per second. Record Cinematic will let you choose your preferred resolution and frame rate. You can film in 1080p HD at 30 frames per second, 4K at 24 frames per second, and 4K at 30 frames per second. My preference is 4K at 24 frames per second. Record stereo sound is on by default. Let's continue to preserve settings section. Every time you're going to open a camera app on your phone, settings will be automatically reset to default unless you choose to enable any of these. This way, next time you're going to open up a camera app, you will be able to continue taking photos or videos with the settings you used last time. Camera mode. If you select this, if you last used video and opened the camera app again, you will get to video instead of photo, which is set by default. It is especially useful if you're going to be filming at the location where you will be filming many different clips. Creative controls, I have checked. It is very useful if you are doing a shoot where you will take photos or videos and need the same filter, aspect ratio, light, or depth settings. If you have it unchecked, it will always automatically reset. The same thing goes to macro controls. I also have enabled exposure adjustment. It will preserve the last used setting and show the exposure adjustment indicator. If you keep night mode enabled, you will preserve the last used settings instead of having the camera automatically reset night mode to auto. Portrait zoom is enabled as well, so it doesn't always go back to the default lens. Action mode is a good idea to have on as well, otherwise you will always have to enable it when you shoot. By default, it is turned off. And lastly, I do have Apple ProRAW, ProRes, and Live Photo enabled as well to keep the last settings used. Let's go back to the main settings panel. Next we have Use Volume Up for Burst, which you want to enable as well. This is a great help if you are taking photos of moving objects, kids running, pets, sports, and so on. When you press volume up and hold it, it will keep taking photos in burst mode. Then in your gallery, you can select which photos you want to keep. Scan QR codes and show detected text is enabled as well. Both are very useful features. Let's look at the composition section. If you struggle with composition, it is a good idea to turn on the grid, as this will help you to keep the horizon straight. If there are situations where you need to mirror the front camera, you can enable it here. It will basically flip the image vertically. View outside the frame, I highly suggest turning it off. When you take photos, especially photo of a person, this may confuse many people thinking that you have the whole person in the frame, as you can see past this area. Once you take photos, you may have a missing part of head or arm. Under photographic styles, you can choose how you want your photos to look by applying an automatic preset. You can choose from standard style, rich contrast style, vibrant style, warm style, and cool style. Prioritize faster shooting is enabled by default. If you will be rapidly pressing the shutter, it will adapt image quality. This means it can reduce the quality. I'm going to turn this off. Lens correction helps reduce any lens distortion on the front and ultra-wide cameras. I am keeping this on as well. Macro control is enabled as well. This shows camera control for automatically switching to the ultra-wide angle lens to take macro photos and videos. iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max has many cameras, so let's get to know them. The main lens is 48 megapixels. Focal length is 24 millimeters and aperture is f1.78, which means that this lens will be great in low light. It has second generation sensor shift optical image stabilization, so this is the camera to use if you are on the go quickly snapping photos. When you will be filming with this lens, you will notice a flower icon popping up here and there. This indicates macro mode. When you hit the flower icon, you can switch between macro and standard camera lens mode in both photo and video. The 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens has 120 degrees field of view. Focal length is 13 millimeters and aperture is f2.2. Ultra-wide angle lens is used to capture larger areas or get creative up-close shots, as anything closer to the lens will get bigger. When you press and hold the lens icon, you can open up the wheel where you can zoom in and zoom out. It is a digital zoom, so the quality degrades when you zoom in. As a photographer, I would strongly suggest using the lenses as they are and rather move yourself closer or further away for the best quality. Telephoto lens is last, and that one is used for portraits and for getting closer to your subject. Enabled by quad pixel sensor, you get 12 megapixels 2x telephoto at 48mm and f1.78 aperture, and also 12 megapixels 3x telephoto at 77mm f2.8 aperture. There's optical image stabilization. You get 3x optical zoom in, 2x optical zoom out, 6x optical zoom range, and digital zoom up to 15 times. Let's turn the iPhone around and let's take a look at the true depth 12 megapixel camera. The aperture is f1.9. What is true depth? It is the technology that powers the phone's Face ID and Memoji features. The camera system can also automatically adjust settings like brightness and volume based on whether or not you are paying attention to your phone, and is used to create depth with portrait mode. In other words, this is your selfie camera. There are 4 ways you can open up the camera app. You can just open up the app from the home screen. You can slide down and you will see the camera symbol here. When the screen is locked, swipe up to see the camera icon, tap and hold, let go, and the camera app opens up. There is one more way you can enable the camera to open up, and that is via double tap on the Apple logo on the back. To enable this, go to Settings, Accessibility Touch, enable Back Tap. I have set double tap to camera and triple tap to take a screenshot. Now that we went through camera settings and lenses, let's take a look at the shooting modes. I'm going to go from the left. First one is Timelapse. Timelapse shoots your scene at 1 to 2 frames per second over a certain period of time, resulting in fast-paced video. If you will be recording 10 minutes, you will end up with a 20-second video. It is highly recommended to use a tripod. The only setting you can control here is exposure. When you tap on the screen and hold, you will lock both exposure and focus. Then you can slide down the sun next to it to adjust exposure. I generally bring it a bit down to make sure nothing is overexposed. Always check the sky. If you don't like the brightness and exposure, wherever you're going to point, it will automatically change. If you don't want to lock focus and want to control exposure only, you can pull up exposure controls by either pressing this exposure icon or this arrow in the center. You can also pull out the controls by simply swiping the screen down and up with your fingers. And now you can slide left or right to adjust the brightness where you want it to be. Once you are done, you can close the control by either tapping plus, minus in the circle icon, or this icon at the top. Time lapses can be filmed with all the lenses: ultra-wide, standard, and telephoto. By the way, the tripod and all the accessories I'm using in today's video are listed in a video description in case you need to grab something. In this mode, you can also create hyperlapse, which is different from time-lapse. Time-lapse is static, where the camera is on one spot. Hyperlapse means that you will be moving, like walking, for example. For best results, I would suggest using a stabilizer. Any gimbal will do. If you're someone who wants to record advanced time lapses where you can control literally everything, you can check out the app Lapse or Timelapse Free. If you will be using Gimbal's apps usually have advanced time lapses and motion lapses. Slow motion can be recorded either in 120 frames per second or even slower slow motion at 240 frames per second. You can shoot both in HD, which will give you higher quality, or if you need a smaller file but also smaller size, you can shoot 240 frames per second at 720p. You can shoot with all 3 lenses, and you can also control exposure here and turn on light if you are filming in low light conditions. Once you take a slow motion video, you can then choose in Edit where you want the slow motion to happen by moving these brackets. The long lines between is where the slow motion will be played. Cinematic video is all about the focus and digital aperture settings. I say digital because it is created by software, which is quite different from optical. In this mode, you will also get enhanced digital stabilization. You can film in 4K at 24 or 30 frames per second, or 1080p HD at 30 frames per second. I like to film at 4K at 24 frames per second. But if I want a bit of a dreamy look, I select 30 frames per second and then in the post slow it down 80%. This look is often used in music videos. You can film with standard lens, telephoto, and selfie camera. Before you film, it is important to select the correct exposure. In this mode, you can only do this with the exposure slider. You can also turn on the video light if you need to. Another setting you can change before you film or after you film the clip is digital f-stop, which stands for aperture. This will make the background blurry or sharp depending on what number you select. The lower the number, the blurrier the background will look. This is, for example, f2.0. The higher the number, the wider focus or sharper the background will look. This is f16. Again, you don't have to worry about it as much before you film, because once you film the clip, you are able to change the setting by hitting Edit. I will show you how to do it shortly. When you film, you can let the camera change focus automatically. When you move the camera, it will select the object on its own. Another option would be selecting autofocus lock. Just tap on the screen to see this yellow square. If you press and hold, the focus will lock. If the camera sees a face, you will see this tracking indicator. If you are filming multiple people and want constant focus on one person, you can lock the focus by tapping on the screen. How can you edit cinematic video? You have all the freedom in the world to select what focus, when and where will happen. Let me pull out a sample clip. If you enable the autofocus lock, here's where you can keep it or turn it off. It is called manual tracking. If you keep it on, you will see the line below yellow as it created a keyframe at the beginning of the clip. If you don't want to keep it, the line will be gray. I'm going to keep it. Next to it is where you can control aperture, the f-stop. The higher the number, the more sharpness will be in the image. If the face has two blurry edges, just increase the number a bit to see if it looks more natural. If you want to change focus throughout the clip, just tap on the object. This will create another keyframe. So now, when I play the clip, you can see that the focus is changing. I'm going to create another one at the end. Let's focus on this object. Now when you play the clip, you can see how it is changing. If you want to delete the keyframe, simply tap on the keyframe and you will see this trash icon which will erase it. Once you're done, hit done. And if you don't like the changes you've made, you can always revert it to the original. This is extraordinary powerful feature to control all of this even after you recorded the clip. Video mode is next. The highest quality possible you're going to get is if you're filming in 4K. In 4K, you can film in 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. If you want to film in 60 frames per second, you need to go from 4K to 1080p HD. In HD, you can also film in 30 frames per second. If you are a complete beginner and need help with understanding frame rates and resolution and all that, I have created such a tutorial in the past. I'll link it below. Anyhow, here is a video filmed in 24 frames per second. Here is a video filmed in 30 frames per second and slowed down 80%. And here is a video filmed in 60 frames per second, slowed down 40% on 24 frames per second timeline. If you will be using an action mode feature, which gives you amazing stabilization, where you literally don't need a gimbal, you're not going to get 4K anymore. You will be filming in 2.8K at 24 or 30 frames per second, or 1080p HD at 30 or 60 frames per second. There will be also a significant crop. This is the frame you get with action mode off. And this is the frame you get with action mode on. In the video mode, you can turn on ProRes format, which is also available if you will be filming with action mode feature on. Once you turn it on, it will also tell you the maximum time. You also get exposure control and video light. All these controls can be pulled up or turned off with this arrow icon in the middle. Photo mode looks simple, but it has a lot of hidden goodies. When you use it right, you can get some amazing results. First of all, if you swipe up or down, you're going to open up or hide all camera controls. Let's swipe up to see all camera settings displayed here at the bottom. From the left, we have flash. Once you hit that, you can see that you can select auto on or flash off. I like to generally keep it off. However, if I take a photo of a person at night and the results are blurry and I cannot see the face, then I turn on the flash to get the snapshot instead. You can also see the flash icon at the top left corner. Whatever control you enable, it will always show here at the top. If you want to change it or disable it, you will just hit it here, if you like, instead of finding it at the bottom. Next to flash will be your night mode. If you are taking photos during the day, you are not going to see it. Let me point at something bright. No, you cannot see it. Now, let me point to the dark room. Now you can see the night mode. It will automatically show up if the phone feels it is suitable for night mode. If you don't see it, it's not dark enough. Night mode can be helpful, but can also be very frustrating to some people. It is something called long exposure. During the day, when there is too much light, the camera will open the shutter super quick and close it because there is so much light, it is blinding. At night, it is the opposite. It wants to open the shutter and keep it there for a few seconds to get enough light in to get the great shot. Unfortunately, during this time, you can make a bit of a shake and it will result in a blurry shot. So it is best to use a tripod. For this mode, the darker it is, the longer it will stay open. The phone can go up to 10 seconds depending on how dark it is. If it is not too dark, it will show 3 seconds. If it gets very dark, it will show the 10 seconds option. If you place the phone on a tripod, it will give you even more, 30 seconds. If you want to take photos handheld and you are finding that the photo is always blurry, simply move the slider to the left and turn it off. You will see that also at the top left corner. If it is crossed out, it is off. Next icon is live photo. You can have that on live auto, on or off. What is a live photo? It is captured as video file, recorded for 3 seconds, and it records sound as well. How is it useful? Here is a photo I took in live mode. When I tap and hold over the photo, I can see a whole recorded video. When I hit edit and I hit the live icon, I'm able to choose the frame I like the best to make it the key photo. What I can also create is a little animation. Leave editing mode and just see the photo. On the top left corner is live. When you click that, you can change it to loop or bounce or long exposure. You can also turn it off. This one is suitable if you want to take photos of a busy place but want it to look empty, or if you want to take photos of water with a soft, smooth effect. Very simple way of doing it. Next icon is photographic styles. You can choose from different looks: standard, rich contrast, vibrant, warm, or cool. Each of them can be adjusted to get the look you want. If you go to rich contrast, for example, you can play with tone and warmth to change it further. If you want to reset it, just go back to the dot. Moving on onto another icon, which is aspect ratio. You can choose the size of the photos here, square, 1:1, or 4:3, or 16:9, which is the full size. Exposure icon is next. You can adjust exposure two different ways when you take photos and videos. You can either use this slider, which is suitable if you take a set of photos in a very similar lighting conditions. Default is set to 0. If I'm taking photos outdoors, for example, and I want to take a series of photos, I could tap on a screen and just slide the sun before each photo to adjust and then take a photo, or I could bring it down here, for example, to -1, so the sky is not bleached. Now, when I take a series of photos, it is already exposed and I just slightly readjust the exposure with a sun slider. The proper way to take a photo is tap on the screen to focus on the object you want and then take a photo. If you want to recompose the shot, as soon as you move the camera, you will lose focus. So it is best to tap on the object and lock by holding it. Then you can adjust the exposure or recompose that shot, which means moving the camera around until you get the frame you like, and then you take photo. If you adjust exposure on a slider, it will also show on the top. If you leave it on 0 default, it's not going to show up at the top because it's not enabled. Timer icon is next. You can select a 3 or 10 seconds timer. Once you are done, don't forget to turn it off, so next time you need to take a photo very quickly, you're not stopped with a timer. After the timer, we have filters. Here's a quite nice selection of looks you can apply to get an interesting look. I'm going back to original. Lastly, you can enable RAW photos. This will save high-resolution files with lots of data. These are not compressed JPEG photos. RAW photos can be then further edited in programs like Adobe Photoshop or Lightroom. Once you enable RAW, Live feature will be automatically disabled. You cannot get them both, so you have to make a choice. If you want to take photo in RAW format or live video file. There is one more feature hidden in the photo mode. When you point the camera over something with a text, you will notice this yellow section. When you will hit the text icon on the bottom right, this will pop up. You can then select the text, copy, select all, lookup, translate, search, web, and share. This is a great feature to have. Moving on to portrait mode. This is very similar to cinematic video mode. Portrait mode will allow you to take photos of your object sharp, while you can select how sharp or how much bokeh you would like to see in the background. You can take photos in portrait mode with standard lens 2x or 3x telephoto. What you can control in portrait mode is flash, night mode, exposure, timer, filters, and f-stop. Just like in the video, this will allow you to select digital aperture. If you take photos of objects or people where they are sharp, for example, here you can go all the way to f1.4 and the result will be good. However, if you take photos of a person, the edges of hair might be smudged. In this case, you might want to go higher, such as f4 or even more. Luckily, you don't have to precisely select the right f-stop before taking the photo. This can be adjusted after you took the photo, just like in the cinematic video mode. Simply open the photo you took, select F, zoom in on the photos, and bring the f-stop until you see smoother edges. You can also select one of the portrait modes depending on the look you want to achieve. Natural light, studio light, control light, stage light mono, and high key light mono. Panorama is the last feature. You can change the direction in which you will continuously move by simply tapping on either side. This will change the arrow direction. Panorama photos can be taken with all lenses. Ultra-wide, wide, 2x and 3x telephoto. Simply hit the shutter button and slowly move in the arrow direction. Once you capture the frame you want, hit the shutter button again to stop. Give it a thumbs up if you found this video helpful. Enjoy your new phone.